It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, swinging, and how you can have secure and sexy relationships, no matter how you do them. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre. Hey, Andre.
Hello, Tara. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast. For those of you who do not know us, I am Tara Lynn Franco. I am a relationship and awesomeness coach.
And I'm Andre Turcotte. I am a sex-positive psychotherapist.
And we are the co-founders of this podcast, as well as the Let's Talk Polyamory online community and our Poly Newbies digital course, as well as Polyamory Mastery.
Sure are.
And our passion is to help you create and maintain healthy and secure non-monogamous relationships. Well, actually any kind of relationships, really, and navigate the tough bits that come up and from time to time.
It's interesting you say any kind of relationship, because I think, well, I'll speak for myself. When we started doing this, it was really to spread the word of open relating, E&M, polyamory, whatever you want to call it, and being an advocate for it and singing the praises of it. But as we do this work, it really is much more apparent that it's not just about that type of relating style. It's all relating styles, and it's not even just romantic. I think a lot of the stuff that we talk about here, communication primarily, is in all the relationships and monogamy, but also in work, in family, and neighbor stuff, all that good stuff, right? So if you can learn to communicate well, you can navigate life.
Yeah. And today's topic, which is on relationship burnout, I think applies to any kind of relationship.
Yeah, sure.
We're sharing it a bit more in the context of new relationship energy and polyamory, but a lot of the same concepts in terms of why relationship burnout happens and what to do to counteract that can be true to everyone.
Right.
We have some hot tips today. We're talking about how to make LRE feel like NRE again.
So what's NRE, LRE?
LRE is long-term relationship energy, which we kind of made up based on NRE, which is
New relationship energy.
New relationship energy. So new relationship energy, that excitement feeling you get when you first meet somebody, when you first start dating.
There's still some mystery. You don't know everything about them. There's no routine yet. It's not, they're going to do this, they're going to do that.
Yeah. Whereas when you're in a longer term relationship, you don't necessarily have all that excitement, or you have to work on it, I'd say.
Or could you maintain that excitement? Could you reinvent it? Could you find ways of still discovering things and feeling that NRE?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome.
You actually recently shared a CNN article on emotional burnout in long-term relationships, and we thought it would make a great podcast topic. And we'll make sure that we share the link to that original article in the show notes. But we thought it was particularly important for people in polyamorous relationships because there's more opportunities, I think, to experience that new relationship energy that if you're in a monogamous relationship, you may not experience, although, is that what you're going to say?
No, but it's interesting. So you draw the possible difference between being in an open relationship, polyamory, and being in a monogamous relationship, a closed relationship, and how polyamory, because you are meeting other people, theoretically anyway, there is that chance for NRE, and then how, then by extension of that, we might say, well, monogamous relationships might be more prone to LRE, the long-term relationship, but how we might still be able to invite some of that in there.
Yeah, although I'm smiling because I think sometimes because there's not the opportunity to have other relationships, that's kind of when you might experience excitement over meeting someone new and end up in a situation where you're cheating and being non-ethically non-monogamous.
True. As wonderful as NRE sounds, though, for some people, that might actually be kind of threatening, right? If you're a partner, if you've been in a kind of secure, closed relationship for a while, and then you open up, and then there's this new NRE that comes into it, and you observe the new energy in your partner, you might be like, well, wait a second, like, I am the old chopped liver, but wasn't that your favorite at one point? And you might feel a little bit threatened by it. And maybe there are ways of still experiencing it, having compersion for your partner having the NRE, or you having it yourself, and still feeling secure in that as well. And if you are in this lockdown, closed, monogamous relationship, we can still find ways to create this new relationship energy-like experience.
Yeah. I think when NRE is happening, it can also be hard for the person experiencing it because it can call into question how you feel about your long-term partner. Well, if I can feel this intense love and excitement over someone else, maybe that means there's something wrong with my long-term relationship. That's not repairable.
That's a definite possibility. Or you might be feeling that NRE and want to protect your partner and say, well, I don't want them to feel insecure. I don't want them to be jealous about this, even though I'm like, wow, over the top, feeling this new energy. I want them to also know that they're still important to me. I still do find value in them as well. So there's many different things to consider.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's talk about relationship burnout first. So there was a quote, burnout isn't just for jobs. Your relationship can wear you out too. And that's totally true.
Yeah, totally.
And so burnout can look like emotional numbness or disconnection, irritation, snapping at things. Our filters tend to go off when we're in long-term relationships, and we're more likely to snap at a partner.
Well, you know, that's an interesting part too. And that's another segue, maybe a little bit premature, perhaps. Can we say premature here? Anyway, that is the idea of, are there negative aspects in a relationship? And it goes back to what Gottman had come up with, talking about the 5-to-1 golden ratio.
Which we're going to talk about as one of the solutions to this in a little bit later, if that's okay.
We can come back to it. We'll circle back.
Yes. I want to talk first about relationship burnout. So avoidance of quality time, that could be a sign that there's some relationship burnout, or physical intimacy.
Which to me is quality time and physical intimacy, right? So maybe you
also quality time.
You're feeling zapped at work, and then you come into your relationship and you're kind of feeling zapped from that or from other things in itself. And maybe libido is not high on your list, right? It's hard to feel up for it when you are feeling zapped and exhausted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You may be fantasizing about leaving or escaping.
Wouldn't it just be easier if I was on an island by myself and wouldn't have to do it? Yeah, just escape.
Or wanting to spend time with others, like friends or family or other partners if you're non-monogamous.
You know, it makes me think of The Perfect Stranger, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we know each other very well. We've been together for thousands of years, and you know all the little traits. You can already tell what I'm going to do even before I know it. But with a stranger who you don't know that, there's no mystery. There's none of that negativity. You can just imagine that the other person is going to be whatever you want them to be. They are the perfect palette, right? So, that fantasizing about somebody else can be quite understandable.
It could also look like one partner feeling like they're carrying all the weight in the relationship. There might be lack of intentional time for just the two of you beyond logistics, like taking the kids somewhere, doing the laundry, deciding what you're making for dinner, you know, that sort of thing. It might feel like it's more transactional, the relationship, or feeling like you're co-parents or roommates rather than partners.
Yeah, you fall into those roles. The idea about the one person carrying all the weight, about the imbalance there, I think there's two things that really come to mind. And number one is communication, obviously. Can we talk about how that's going out? And two, what about our boundaries, the parameters? Did we kind of identify what roles we're going to do, how one person is going to do one thing and the other person? If we had that agreement in our relationship, I wonder if we ever agreed to, well, I'm going to carry the burden of all these responsibilities. I'm going to take all of this on. Or does it kind of just creep in, and then one day we find ourselves under this burden, and that's a resentment, right? It's like, wow, how did I end up having to shoulder all this? And also, to that, makes me think also about consideration. Am I just taking, or do I recognize how my partner might be carrying a heavier load? Am I putting it upon the other person? Am I Dominic the donkey, or am I just the rider?
And I think it could be quite complex too. Like if you feel like you're doing all the things, it might be that your partner is not willing or is not offering or not participating. Or it might be that you enabled the situation where you took on everything, or maybe you were critical of your partner, or maybe you're not letting them do those things.
Right. Maybe it serves you well to do all of that, right? And you can be the martyr, you can be the rescuer, you can be whoever it is. Yeah. So it's quite interesting.
So, the partner maybe feels like they don't have a space to it. No blame here, but sometimes I think it's good to understand that there might be a complexity around this.
Are you trying to tell me something? So let's say, no, I don't suspect. I like to think that there's a pretty good balance, but if there was an imbalance, how would we address it? What would be our recipe for?
I feel like we would talk about it.
How might one of us bring it up?
Why? Do you want to say it?
No, I'm just wondering. I think we have a pretty good, I like to think, in my experience, that there seems like there is a good equality to it. Maybe do a little bit more in some aspects, and I try to just get out of your way. But I like to think that if there was something that we would be able to announce it and say, hey, I feel like, it's falling on me to do this, and could you help shoulder some of this burden? Or, what have you done for me lately? Whatever it might be, but we would try and find our way to talk about it. But I'm wondering, if we didn't have this easy invitation, how would we bring it up? How do you bring up the difficult parts?
Well, we're going to talk about that as one of the tips later, but relationship reviews are a good opportunity for that if you have those regularly scheduled. But I think in terms of our relationship, I think I'm sort of the type of person that takes the things on, because either I just want to do it, or I want to be very particular about the way I do it, or whatever it is, right? So one of my bosses a long time ago she used to be mad at me because she would say I would enable our directors. So they would submit something for approval or whatever, and then I would fix it or whatever to be like she wanted it. And she's like, they're never going to learn if you keep fixing their things, So
I wonder, just hearing that in this example, what's it like for you to not have it done the Tara perfect way? How would it be to just allow for their own expression? Well, or do you have to control it?
Well, I've been practicing this, as you know. We're planning a trip, and I'm trying to be very, you're being amazing and planning it, but
sounds like a surprise.
No, but often I like things done a certain way, and I'm particular about it. And so you decided to take it on, and I'm really appreciative of that, because I'm busy doing some other things, and you're doing an amazing job. So.
I think I was voluntold to take it on, but okay, yes, I decided
Were you voluntold?
to take it on.
I thought you volunteered.
No, I was trying to do it for you because I recognize that planning is important to you. Mm-hmm. So as a partner who's attentive and listening and present, I said, well, if that's important to her, then it should be somewhat important to me. Let me see if I can at least make the gesture of the effort in there. And you recognize it. So, whoa, yay, look at us.
Yeah. So the thing about relationship burnout is we want to normalize this, because it happens in all relationships, and not just polyamorous ones or non-monogamous ones. It can be a bit more complicated because of the whole other people factor in non-monogamous relationships. So let's talk about common causes, and maybe we've touched on a few of these already, but let's go through them. And the first one is one that we talked about: inequity in domestic and emotional labor.
And to that, I would add not only domestic and emotional labor, but also in the workplace as well. So I'm extremely busy at the moment. You're kind of on a sabbatical, and there's an imbalance, and maybe you recognize that I am working hard, but at the end of the day, it's like, come on, like I still have all this energy, and I'm burnt out from doing all the things I do. So I think the workplace part might play into it as well.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah. Those are sort of other stressors for sure. Yeah. So in domestic and emotional labor, so one partner may feel like they're the default for managing logistics, emotional regulation, caregiving, and in what might be considered invisible labor can add up and create resentment and disconnection.
Yeah. Resentments are just so toxic, right? I mean, in anything, in your family, in your work life, in your relationship life, resentments are the seeds that grow all of the ill that we might have in a relationship. And then how does that come across in the transfers? How does it come across when we're interacting with that person that we might be holding resentment towards? Mm-hmm. Whereas when we are able to recognize it and then address it, talk about it, it really helps process it and take away a lot of the weight that the resentment is holding. So let's avoid just trying to brush it under the rug or minimize it or pretend like it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. If there's a resentment there that's not addressed, it tends to come back and find itself in some way. So we need to really talk about, well, what's making me feel this way, and how do we make restitution to it? How can we figure out a way to resolve this?
Absolutely. And we did a whole podcast. I think we actually might have done two. No, there was at least one, but we'll put that in the show notes as well. Yeah. So I think what's interesting is one of my clients recently told me that her partner opted out of certain things. And because I had offered, like, she was very stressed because she was very busy with work and she has a busy job, and she ends up being sort of the default caregiver for whatever reason. Like, I don't know the whole details of their situation. And when I asked her, is there something her partner can help with? And she said he just opted out. And I thought that was interesting. But it might too be that sometimes things aren't important to the other person. So they may opt out of things that they feel are optional. Mm-hmm. Like, say you're traveling on a trip. Like, when we travel, it's really important for me to have like food in the car and snacks and stuff like that. So I spend a bit of time prepping and planning for that. Now, if we were in a relationship where you didn't really care about that, maybe you would be like, well, we don't need to do that. We could just stop on the way, right? So then the other person may be just doing the work, whereas the other person's not really having value in it. You know what I mean? I mean, that's not the case with us, but because you would get the food, you would talk about it, we'd plan it, you'd help prepare the stuff. But, you know, that could be a situation that might happen for people.
But we're lucky in that sense that we do hold the same value to it. But you're absolutely right. If one of us didn't value it the same way, then maybe it would not be shared in that sense. But when you say opting out, it made me think, again, something we'll be talking about a little bit later, the horsemen, Gottman's four horsemen to toxicity and negativity, and one of the things being withdrawal. So when I opt out, am I detaching with love, and is it consensual, or am I simply withdrawing, and does it even turn into being aggressively passive?
Yeah.
Right. So how is it going to be communicated? Maybe I don't have to participate in everything, but are we able to, again, do it in an informed way where I can express what I'm feeling and you can then know it and not say, wow, like, I wonder why they don't have that same level of enthusiasm or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Communication.
Absolutely. Okay. So one of the other causes of burnout is repetition without renewal. So this is the whole idea about routines. And routines can be comforting, like we do love routines in some ways, but they can also be a bit lifeless and boring. And if we have routines in certain things where, like sex or affection, quality time, they may start to feel like we're doing the same things all the time, and it may feel like tasks or afterthoughts rather than intentional time, planning, excitement.
As if I may. So when you were talking about routine and sex, you know, some people would say, oh, we go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
And that may be the thing, and even if it works. But I was wondering if in masturbation, if anybody, our listeners ever masturbate, or if you or whoever, do we ever fall into routine with that? Do you ever masturbate and say, oh my God, this is boring, this is the same thing, I need to mix it up? It seems like that area there is kind of like, I know what my plan is, I go to it, it's all good, I don't care about routine. You know, it's funny, right?
It is funny. It is funny.
But in relationships, yeah, if we're always coming with the same approach, or our partner's always coming with the same approach, could we mix up and do 1, 3, 2 sometimes and see, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, because there can be a lack of like novelty or shared joyful experiences. Like you said earlier, like knowing each other too well, you're like not surprised anymore. And I think that's what I really appreciate about you, if I may. We were talking about this yesterday, actually, when we were biking to the beach. We had we had walked around for Pride, and then we decided to meet our friends at the beach on the island, and we went over there and we were just biking, and I was looking at you and going, I was so lucky to have you as a partner, because you really love adventure and having fun. And, you know, while we do planning, we also do fun, spontaneous things, and we do prioritize being happy and having fun and adventure.
I think spontaneity is one of those things that kind of interrupts routine, right? Because we know it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and then suddenly, spontaneously, we say we'll do it 1, 3, 2, and that does change it. But I think that again speaks to the idea of the possibility of NRE, that we don't know what the new partner is going to have in their lineup, right? It might be 1, 3, 2, and it's a whole new thing to us, and it's like, wow, that's fantastic. Whereas when we are already in this established relationship, do we tend to do that? And if we do find that there is this monotony to it, or this repetition, what can we do to invite a different way of being with it?
Yeah. I love this quote from Esther Perel. Resentment is the quiet killer of desire. So that was in line with your resentment comment.
Yeah. Mark Twain has a very good one on that. Yeah.
Do you know it?
Off the top of my head, I will be bastardizing, but he says something to the effect that monotony or familiarity is the bedground of contempt. So maybe our listeners can
chime in the comments. Yes. Awesome. Okay, so another cause of relationship burnout might be enmeshment and identity loss. And that, I think, is a really big one. I think sometimes people in long-term relationships end up in this situation where they fulfill a role. You know what I mean? They're a wife, they're a co-parent, they're a husband, they're a mother, they're a father, rather than an actual individual. As opposed to when we come together originally, we are two individuals with two unique identities, with sets of hobbies and all this stuff. So it's what Perel calls like a loss of differentiation. We sort of forget who we are outside the relationship. And, you know, we try to be one, you know, we. Anyways,
when does I become we?
Yes.
Like we start off dating each other. I would like to date you. And we go at it a couple of times. And then suddenly we become a we. And do we become too enmeshed? Do we lose part of ourselves? It makes me think also, you spoke earlier about travel and how when we go out traveling, I imagine this is true of many, many couples, that we imagine, well, we're going to go to the same destination. We're going to stay in the same hotel. We're going to rent a car and drive together. So it's like all these activities together. If at home we do have our own separate activities, which is very beneficial, when we travel, are we now suddenly breaking that and doing everything together? Or would we be well served having a little bit of individual time? But if that's not possible, how can we still maintain our own thing? So on the plane, do we have to be on top of each other? Or are you reading your book, I'm reading my book? Are there ways of still maintaining that individuality?
Of course there are. And I think there's, and we're going to talk a bit about this in the sort of like the fixes for these things in terms of how you sort of get back that identity. But the thing I want to point out about people who are in like open or polyamorous relationships is, and that what people experience, even if they're not experiencing the NRE, when they're with someone new who doesn't know them in that role, like you're not the mother, you're just you, I'm just Tara, you're just Andre. They see you as an individual rather than that role. And it feels good to feel that, being that, having that identity that you're a separate human. And a lot of people get really caught up in that. They're like, I can just be me. I don't have to be any other thing when I'm with that person. So it's kind of interesting thing that happens. There's also codependency and losing your identity like as a separate person.
It also makes me think of attachment style.
Yeah. And then when we're in that relationship, it's like we all of a sudden decide that one person is going to be our everything. Whereas before we get into relationships, we have our friends, we have our activities, we have our hobbies. People tend to let those things sort of fall away to some extent. And so, yeah. So
it made me think the other day, I was speaking to somebody and she was talking about how she would like to be polyamorous for the idea that she's not putting all of her eggs in one basket, so to speak. So emotionally, she has what she considers to be a diverse portfolio. That, you know, if I am with you all the time, only you, all of my investments are in that one person, and heaven forbid something should happen, what happens to me then? Whereas when we have friends, we have family, when we have all these other people, a lover or two or five, we might have different people and we kind of spread it out a bit, and it might create this feeling of having more security because you have not a reliance on one single person to be your everything for always and ever.
For always and ever, which leads us to the next cause of relationship burnout, which is over expectation and emotional overload. So emotional overfunctioning, you become my default partner. So you have to be everything to me, my partner, my best friend, my therapist, my lover, my co-parent, my cheerleader. And it's just too much for one person to carry.
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds fantastic, right? One-stop shopping, you got everything right there. But yeah, can it be a burden to be the one who has to show up and be all of that? And also, are we doing ourselves a disservice by putting all of it upon one person?
Yeah, we're sort of not always our best person too. Like we may put up a good front, like at work, for example, like you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed and stuff, but because you need to keep up appearances in your career, you might be like, I'm going to be happy and good and stuff like that. And as soon as I come home, I'm like angry and annoyed and tired. And, you know, we can tend to take this out on our partner.
I'm laughing because, yeah, it's interesting when you do become in a partnership like that, how you might feel more secure enough to kind of dump that way. Whereas if you were simply dating or one of your suitors, maybe you wouldn't feel so secure to do that. So are you then making a lot of assumptions? Are you taking for granted? And then, well, hey, you're mine, so here it comes. Like, I'm going to throw it all on you and you'll just have to pick it up because that's what it means to be with me.
And I think there's a balance. Obviously you want, like, I think you're all those things to me, but I have also other people that are some of those things to me, right? It's not just everything on you. So on the flip side, when you're in a long-term relationship, there can be emotional disconnection. So maybe you don't feel like you want to connect with them. You have that distance and that sort of thing. And I think this next one connects to what we were just talking about, lack of boundaries and being an emotional dumping ground. So when everything, so stress, parenting, finances, identity spills into the relationship container, the relationship can burn out fast.
Yeah, sure.
So, and we default to making our partner that dumping ground, you know.
The container part makes me think about early in my training, I had this fantastic supervisor, Dr. Loeb, and she said that as therapists or as partners, we are going to be often the container for other people's thoughts and feelings that they may not be able to contain themselves. They may want to share it with you. And if that's the case, what can we do to empty that container on occasion? And she, in her wisdom, said, well, we should live a life well led. So find ways of sharing that burden, find ways of indulging in good activities that make you feel restored. What can we do to make sure that there is a balance, that we're not simply filling and filling and filling that container to the point where it gets burnt out?
Yeah, that's right. So space, boundaries, and autonomy are critical for long-term desire and long-term relationship, not burnout. So
claiming space, not only physically, but emotionally space. How would you suggest that I might be able to do that?
Well, we're going to talk about that in a bit.
Amazing.
And I think you mentioned this at the beginning, external stresses. So that can cause relationship burnout. So one or more people in the relationship experiencing stress at work or family or health situations can also cause some impacts on the relationships. So let's talk a bit about NRE. And we did talk about it at the beginning, why it feels so good. So part of it is what we talked about. It isn't just chemistry, and that chemistry is there, meeting someone new, that excitement, being attracted, feeling attractive again, but it's also how we see ourselves through new eyes, and that sort of speaks to the role and being an individual again. Yeah.
That's interesting. So seeing or being seen through new eyes, and then also the new role that's taken on. I wonder, though, if we don't have opportunity to engage with anybody new, if it's not happening for whatever reasons, how we could then create those new roles, right? How could we?
We can, and we do it all the time.
We sure do, right? So what's one of the ways that we do that you might want to share? Could you?
I think we're going to talk about it in a little later on.
All right. Hopefully the producers will have their scissors at hand and can edit that out.
So why NRE feels so good sometimes is it's free of sort of those emotional or logistical burdens like bills, chores, or parenting responsibilities. So if you're seeing someone and they aren't your co-parent, you can share those things with them, but you don't have to. Like, those are things you don't have to worry about together. And like we said earlier, you're treated as an individual person. And there's some freedom in that. Yeah. I think people feel a lot of freedom in that. You can feel creative, flirty, thoughtful, sexy, spontaneous, and that can be very affirming.
Indeed it can.
Yeah. So we also talked about that at the same time, NRE can intensify the emotional divide between what's happening in that NRE relationship and what's in your long-term relationship. And so you may find yourself in your long-term relationship longing for that freedom, that feeling of freedom at home. You may be judging your relationship based on that feeling, like we talked at the beginning, and you might get into that compare and despair trap.
So there's some dangers to it.
Yeah. And I think it's important. There's definitely some dangers to it. Not to say that you don't engage in it. I think you just need to be aware of it and also nurture your long-term relationship.
Yeah, by all means. I mean, everything. I think anything comes with the potential of some cons. Right? There's always pros and cons to everything. But I think we can look at the possible benefits to it and invite that.
Yeah. And I think also normalizing that there's going to be these ebbs and flows. You are going to feel NRE, and it's okay as long as you're taking care of your other relationship as well. So, it's not a bad thing. Neither of them are bad things. It's just you need to understand and be aware of it. And I think with understanding and awareness, you can feel better about it.
Good point.
So, but you can feel a bit of that push-pull dynamic when you're in that situation. So let's talk about what helps. Finally.
All right.
You ready?
Yeah, rebuilding the connection in burnout?
Yes, rebuilding. Correct. Can LRE be NRE again? I think absolutely. I think burnout doesn't have to mean breaking up. And here's what we do and what we teach our clients to do. So the first one is having relationship reviews. So we always teach our RADAR method, RAADAR, which is review, agenda, affirm and connect, discussion, action plan, and reconnect. And this can be a monthly or a quarterly check-in just to see how the relationship feels, if there's anything you want to bring up that maybe you're uncomfortable with.
Yeah, and some people even go a step beyond that, because we could say, well, let's do a quarterly review. How's everything going? Oh, it's going fine. Okay, boom. But could we, as some people do, they will actually already table certain things. They'll say,
Absolutely.
well, house cleaning is always going to be on the list. Finance is always going to be on the list. Work balance is always going to be, so they'll go through these things and not just like, oh, everything's fine and that's it.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk about each one of these points and really do it. So how, as if it was the business meeting, and, where do we stand in this? Let's get knowledge of this. And I think personally, it's so important, because if we don't, that's in those little cracks where little resentments can start to fester, and then they can become bigger things.
Yeah. And you just discussed the R and the A of first A of radar. So review. So the review section is basically what's happened. And that's like the factual things. What's happened since our last relationship review. And the agenda is creating the agenda. So you may have, like you said, a standing agenda, and then you may have other items that you want to add to the agenda. But yeah, having some sort of standard agenda. And in our program, we offer some suggestions, but you can really come up with anything. And then you might want to add certain things on.
I'm laughing because it makes me think about yesterday. I had a shower thought, and when I finished my shower, you were there. And so I asked you, I said, Tara, where is this relationship going?
And I was like, what do you mean? Where is it going? I didn't really know how to answer that.
After all these years. But it's interesting to think about. I think it ties in well to this relationship review, because it might, okay, we're reviewing what happened as per review, but what about the viewing of what's going to happen? Do we have a business model? Do we have a plan? Should we have a plan?
Do we have a business model?
Well, where do you see yourself in 35 years, 45 years?
I'd see me still hanging around with you if we're both alive. But yeah, no, it's a very good point, especially if you're at the beginning of the relationship. You might want to know whether, if you have an idea that you want to get married and have kids at some point, even if you're non-monogamous, you might want to know if that's what your partner wants to do, which is actually a great, that's why those 36 questions and the additional 36 questions that we added are important, because that was one of them, is where do you see yourself? Like, do you see yourself getting married or having a family? Is that important to you?
Well, it's interesting too. We get into this and maybe we just want to meet each other without great expectation, which is a wonderful thing. But then all of a sudden we end up playing tennis on a weekly basis, and you and I are playing tennis as regular tennis partners. But we've never really spoken about what's going on off the tennis court. And did you know that in a couple of years, I might want to modify my lifestyle?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about traveling for 6 months of the year. And you're like, wow, I love this tennis court. I wasn't really thinking about being away from it for that long.
Yeah.
And now, where do we go? So in our reviewing, should we forward view and say, well, in a number of years, I'm going to want to travel to other courts, and, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Has it been spoken about? So I think that's why it's important to look at.
Yeah. And just to finish off the radar, since we talked about, we do the review, which is where we go over the factual things, what's happened, agenda, set an agenda for this review, and there could be standing items plus additional items. We added in additional A, which we called affirm and connect, because sometimes putting that together can be, deciding what you're going to talk about, especially if there's tough things to talk about, might be difficult. So having some time to affirm and connect. And then you have the discussion, and then you have an action plan. So every time you should also be talking about the previous action plan if you did those things, and then have some time to reconnect. So that's the entire radar. And
also, you said we talked about the factual things, but also it could come up that when this happened, it made me feel this way, or I thought that this was right.
Yes. Oh, the nonviolent communication method.
Which is also something we speak about, communication, attunement, and nonviolent communication, right? So when something did happen in the past, how am I going to talk about it? You always do this, you never do that? It might not be the best approach. But letting you know that on occasion when this happened, I felt this way, might be an easier way to kind of broach that subject.
Yeah, so as part of the discussion, definitely engaging in attuned communication and nonviolent communication in your sharing of things. So
radar.
And if you haven't done one of these before, you can always start small. You can have them more frequently. Some people, when they're first opening up a relationship to non-monogamy, if they're in an existing relationship, will have more frequent ones, like a weekly basis. They'll have like a Sunday check-in, but then you can spread it out a bit more as needed.
Yeah, when we first started doing this, it made me feel as though it was very contrived and it was very, I don't know, like too technical kind of deal. I wasn't that familiar with it, and it seemed like it was going to be this big process. But it makes me think back to early on having open communications about STI testing. At first, I thought, wow, like how's it going to be received? And I'm going to feel awkward. They might feel awkward. And now I just say it in a very matter-of-fact kind of way, and people are like, oh, okay, yeah, let's talk about it. And I think the same thing holds true with this, that it might feel a little bit kind of like too much of a formula in the beginning, but once you get into this rhythm, it becomes very second nature. And I think it really does speak to the quality of our relationship. So please consider giving that a try.
Yeah, and I think it's important to schedule it. And you're not doing it when you're in conflict. So, you know what I mean? It's to do on a regular basis. And I think part of what you review is like all the good things that happened, and maybe the things that weren't so great. And then like what things maybe you want to change. Like those are some of the things. And we talk about it more in our course.
Segue. Talking about all the good things that happen. So again, that goes back to Gottman's 5-to-1 ratio, the golden ratio. Having one negative thing in our relationship, one negative thing in our review, in our conversation, is so powerful that they've discovered that we need 5 positive or affirming things in order to counter that one thing. If we are able to maintain that 5-to-1 ratio, we have a much, much better chance, in fact, 90% chance of having a successful relationship to those who don't.
Yeah.
So we do need to address those negative things and really try to nip them in the bud or address them or find resolution to them. But we also then need to pay credit to the things that are working well. If we are wanting the relationship to work out.
Yeah. And I think since we're talking about it, we might as well talk about it, even though it's number 6 on the list.
We'll jump.
So they say unhappy couples have fewer positives and escalating negatives. So if you're at a 1-to-1, does it feel like there's 1 negative to 1 positive? Then that's something you need to really pay attention to.
Well, if it were an investment, you would not invest that.
Yeah.
Right? If you're investing $1 and getting back that same dollar, it's like, well, I'm not really.
Oh, that's a good example.
Right. So we're looking for a higher return, right? Because it's, you have a finite amount of resource, that time. So we want to get back that feeling that I'm getting a good payoff, that I'm giving the other person a great payoff. Because you can get that. There's no good reason to believe that you could not have that kind of relationship. So find out what would have that kind of return for you.
Yeah, and I think it was important to also note that anger is okay. It's not like we're saying you can't be angry at your partner. You can be angry at a situation, but it is, the things that they talk about is criticism, contempt, or defensiveness, or being emotionally dismissive or critical. So in your anger, if you're those things, that's where it's problematic. Like I can be angry at the situation. Like I didn't like it when this happened. And then, then you talk about things that you could do.
But you express it in a way that's not cutting or personalizing it, right? You speak about that issue. But yeah, being angry is, I think, natural, but it's how we express it. I remember years ago working with this couple who had been together for 30, 40 years, and they said that one of the secrets to their longevity was that they fought well. That when they did feel anger and they shared it, they never personalized it. They never went to try and hurt the other person. It was really more to express what it was that was making them angry, and then trying to come up with a collaborative way of addressing what it was and how could we go into it in the future.
Yeah, and some things you can do is validation and showing empathy, being interested, expressing affection, and demonstrate that your partner matters through actions and words, intentional appreciation. I like how it said, how you think about your partner actually influences what you do and how you treat them.
Without a doubt.
And so finding in arguments in where you disagree with something, finding opportunities for agreement. Like maybe there's things in that whole situation that you can agree on,
I don't like when you do this, but I like the way you communicate about it.
And we actually have a tool that's in our courses as well, is our appreciation and love list, which I created for a couple who was kind of going through some difficult things. and had forgotten how much they cared about each other. And so the idea was to write down a bunch of things they appreciated and loved.
Well, it makes me think very much about something that I do often is the gratitude list.
Yes.
Right? You can always find something to be grateful for in life, in yourself, in your partner.
Absolutely. I think we just want to be heard. And you know, in any situations, in our situations where we disagree with something, I think I just really want to be heard, and you just really want to be heard and understood. Even if you don't agree, you can hear and you can understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so another way of offsetting this is prioritizing quality time. And quality time doesn't have to be fancy. It can just be intentional. So, you know, when we have a new partner, we're doing dates, we're setting up dates, finding fun things to do. We should also be doing those things with our long-term partner, having those adventures. And I gave the example to someone I talked to not that long ago, where you, in secret, planned a fun little biking adventure for us in Montreal. And I didn't know where we were going, what we were doing, and it was super special. And that didn't cost anything. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing.
The best part for me in that, well, there were many wonderful parts, but watching you not know, so you could not be in control of that. You could not be, you had to be spontaneous and just turn it over. And I give you a very high passing marks. You did a great job of being, okay, you know what? I don't know where we're going. I don't know what he's got planned, if anything, but I'm going to just trust the process and let's go to it. And we had a wonderful time. But you're right. It doesn't have to be this big extravagant thing. It was really the gesture of knowing that you like planning, that it was important to you. I recognized that and said, okay, let me speak in your language. I know what you like. I'm going to try and make this effort. And that seemed to great points from that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, so it could be just as simple as that. It doesn't have to be spending money.
Yeah.
You know, it could be 15 minutes of screen time before bed, or.
But I think for me, you really touched on it in saying that it is the demonstration of being present, being emotionally present with the person. And yeah, it could be over a Zoom chat, but you are connecting in a way that makes the other person feel as though they are being recognized, that they're being seen and heard.
Yeah. And so if you're not sure, like what are those things, you know, you can start by asking yourself, what helps us feel close? Like what situations have helped us feel close now and in the past? Was there something you used to do or that you've stopped doing?
Makes me think also of our different love languages. So I know what yours is, and I think you know what mine is. And this weekend in particular, you were really demonstrating it. And I know that I've told you repeatedly how much I enjoyed that.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. So I think it's good to be able to get in sync that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And remembering what you love about your partner, not the things that make you angry all the time. Like, you know, I think we get caught up in that. Like I've gotten caught up on that. It's like, this person is like annoying. Why are they being so annoying? But why was I attracted to them in the first place, and building on that, right?
You know, it's interesting. So maybe you reflect back on those original things, but also if you are having a hard time doing that, if they've faded so far in the back, could you meet your partner or any person anew?
Yeah.
Could you suspend what you already know and feel about them and say, you know what, I'm simply going to leave that, maybe for the moment, maybe forever, I don't know. But at the moment, I'm just going to go into this other position. I'm challenging myself to come here meet you with a new slate and just see like, hey, I'm Andre. And, you know, we meet each other.
Hi,
nice to meet you.
So that's a great segue into the idea of creating rituals of quality time and or novelty. So not just defaulting to logistical meetings like, when are we taking the kids? What are we making for dinner? Although I feel like we talk about that when we're together a lot. What are we eating for dinner?
Happens every night.
But set aside time for fun and flirtation or creative connection. And I think we do that really well.
Without a doubt we do. But you know what's so interesting is some people do role playing as a kink, as a sexual activity. Yes. They really get into that. If it works so well for them, then why not borrow from that? And why does it, or should it not be beyond just the bedroom? So how could we go into new roles, in a sense, in our relationship that would allow for different expressions, right? So if you put on a different hat, you're going to maybe fall into that role, into that character. So what hat could you put on that would allow for that? And could you invite your partner or partners to have some new hats so that they also could participate in this? Yeah. It's interesting.
So it's important to keep in mind that newness is not just for new partners. So you can discover new places, revisit places you love, try new activities, and be playful. Like I think that's always a good thing.
Yeah, like that.
Share fantasies or future dreams, even if you never act on them. That's kind of fun. Just keep it simple and find creative ways. If you don't know, there's so many AI tools out there that you can ask to suggest some ideas of things you could do.
Yeah, or ask us.
Or ask us. Obviously, yeah.
We're full of ideas.
Another thing that's helpful, in particular, if you're in a situation where you have multiple partners and there's transitions between dates and being with other partners, you might want to implement having intentional transitions around dates with other partners. And so I've experienced this with couples that I've worked with. It's great to have something planned before that. So something fun and exciting planned before, and then something to look forward to afterwards.
So you plan something with your original partner when you're going on a date with another partner?
Yes. Yeah.
So a way of our connecting. So you're going to have a date with X, but before going on the date with X, you and I would do something, and then we plan to reconnect again afterwards?
Yeah, you make plans. So it's not like you do something necessarily the same day, but the day before or on the weekend, say you're with your partner on the weekend, you do something fun and exciting then, and then you plan something for afterwards so that you both have something interesting to look forward to, but also as a way to reconnect. And one of the couples I worked with found this particularly helpful for them, especially because their partner was long distance. And so when they went to see them, it was like a whole weekend. And so they would be gone. So they would always do something like fun the day before, whatever, to connect and feel good about it. They would have some methods of staying connected in between. And then afterwards, they would have something. So, yeah.
Awesome.
The idea is we want our partners, our long-term partners, to still feel like they're a priority to us. We're still planning and doing things with them as well, not just spending all of our time and energy planning for somebody else. So, yeah. And then name and normalize the feelings and the cycle. So we talked about that a bit earlier. Like, these are natural feelings. Our feelings with our partners ebb and flow. And understand and name it if it's happening. Like, if you feel this burnout's happening in your relationship, just communicate it. Be honest about it. And don't try to compare your long-term relationship with a new relationship, because they're just different and not the same. And so if you're feeling sad or jealous or resentful or any of those things, then make sure you connect with your partner and talk with kindness and curiosity. And you can do that. Their example is, I'm noticing how good it feels to be seen and celebrated in this new dynamic, and I miss that with us. Or you could say to your partner, like you said, maybe not quite.
I'm just thinking about that, and it sounds as though it's a...
Is it too comparison-y?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, this feels so great. I wish we could have some of that. Maybe it makes it feel a little bit not quite level.
So maybe we wouldn't use that. That's a good point. Maybe we wouldn't use that example. Maybe it would be more like, I really loved it when we did this. Is that something we can do again?
Well, okay, so that's interesting. So now you've identified what those components in the other experience were, and then you go back and invite your partner.
I think that's a better example.
I like that.
I like that. Or like you said, I've noticed you being really affectionate with me this weekend. I'm really loving that. I'm really loving it. And that was great. And then that actually encouraged me to do it more.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Isn't that fun how it works, right? So I have an appreciation. I communicate it. You appreciate the appreciation, and then it feeds that. That's awesome.
Hot tips. We got them. So some reflection prompts for you. Have you experienced this dynamic where you're feeling burnt out in one relationship but energized in the other? And what is one small action? I like having a 10-minute action. So if you're listening to this podcast, write down one thing you could do right now in the next 10 minutes to begin the process of rekindling that curiosity and connection in your long-term relationship.
And also, if you are feeling burnt out, how do you communicate that? And if you hear that your partner is being burnt out or feeling burnt out, how are you able to do that? Are they wanting a shoulder and an ear to just hear them? Or are they wanting a mouthpiece where you come up with some suggestions of how we might tackle this?
So maybe if you haven't, schedule that relationship review first have a discussion about wanting to have the relationship review and what it might entail, and then, go to it.
Yeah.
So, just to wrap up, long-term relationships do take care and maintenance. They're not meant to be a grind. They're meant to be fun.
Yeah.
Like we're meant to reap the benefits of being in a long-term relationship. So if you're not feeling like you're feeling those benefits, then it's time to, take some action, intentional action. And so an NRE itself is not a threat. It can be seen as an invitation. And so consider that.
Awesome.
So I think that's it.
All right.
Awesome. So if you love this episode, leave us a review and share with a friend or partner. If you have ideas on what you can do that's awesome to address long-term relationship energy, drop those in the comments. And if you want help navigating your relationship or burnout or NRE, you can always reach out to us and book a call with either of us, or, jump in and do our Poly Newbies digital course. We have a lot of suggestions in there.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
If you want to have secure, satisfying, and sexy relationships, check out our Poly Newbies digital course. It's 7 modules of all you need in one place. And as a thank you to our listeners, we're offering it at an exclusive price. Link is in the show notes, plus all the other awesome things we talked about today. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast with TNA. Don't forget to subscribe and give us some love on your favorite podcasting platform. You can check out the show notes for any of the links to the courses or information we talked about today. Thanks, and have a fantastic and sexy day.